Welcome to Crimepedia Podcast. This week I am your host. My name is Cherry, and with me, as always, is my trusty sidekick. It is Morgan.
Hello, Cherry.
Hello. We have a good episode for you this week. This week's episode is from back in 1940.
It's a recent one for you.
Yeah, a really recent one for me. So it's still an unsolved case. And I found this one really, really interesting. I was looking up for something completely different, and this one came up, and then it just ended up being down a rabbit hole completely on this one. So I thought, I think if I'm that interested, then you guys will probably be that interested too. So I thought I definitely can't pass this one up. And I've got some really good episodes coming up for you. I'm working on a couple with some family members, and we've got some really interesting, I would say, miscarriage of justice kind of episodes. So if you're a fan of that kind of thing, I've got a few of those coming up soon. And that's something I really like to work on, is the miscarriages of justice. I always think it's really important.
You have one coming up from Australia, right?
Yeah, still working on that one. Yeah, that one is a crazy one. Yeah, that one. The problem is with that one is that there's so many. Just when I think I'm done with the research, something will come up and I'm like, but I can't ignore that. So then you have to go and research all of that new stuff. So it's one of those cases that's going to be a long time in the making, I think. But I think it'll be interesting for you. I think you'll enjoy getting your teeth into it.
I do have a quick question for you. I know that you do enjoy older cases.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you ever feel frustrated or get disheartened when you're doing these cases and you research these cases, knowing that the likelihood of them being solved is really diminished just because of the time frame we're looking at.
I think that's what gives me the motivation to look into old cases, is the fact that they've been unsolved for such a long time. And obviously with the police forces, their resources are tight. And so every time a new murder happens, the older murders get pushed back even more. And so obviously the quicker the first 48 hours of a murder we know are the most crucial. And so the police, quite rightly, their time is being used up by those kind of cases. And the more we have, the more chance that the older ones aren't going to get solved.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've had a few conversations with people where they've said, well, what's the point? All the family members are dead. That person's dead. There's nobody for you to give justice to. And that's not the point. That person deserves, the victim deserves to have their story told, and they deserve to find out who was responsible for their death, so that it's not an unsolved case anymore. And who knows? That you could solve one case and that could lead to solving many more. You just don't know.
That's right. So what do we have for the case today?
Okay, so this week's case is a case of a lady called Jean Brown, but we know her as Blondie. A murder that made front pages of the newspapers in Britain in 1940, a time when the country was under the watchful eye of Adolf Hitler, and we were preparing for war. A woman with many aliases, known to many people as something different, lost her life in a basement flat in Plymouth, southwest England. This is Crimepedia, and this is the murder of Blondie. Okay, Morgan, so Jean Brown was also known as Blondie to her friends. She was a small, slight 23-year-old. She had been dating a 24-year-old man called Reginald Strange for about 3 years. They lived in a small basement flat, which was number 2 Raleigh Street in Plymouth, which is in the southwest of England. Now, friends and people who knew Jean said that she was of bad character. So she was a bit of a... It's not clear what job she actually did, but I've read lots of different things. One where she was a dancer, an adult dancer. Another where she was said to entertain gentlemen at her flat. But she did live there with Reg, which was her partner.
Okay.
Now, the relationship between her and Reg wasn't the best always. Some people said that it was a little bit fractious, and according to Reg, in early April 1940, she had written to him to tell him that things were over between them. The letter that she wrote was quite harsh. It was quite a harsh letter, very to the point. She basically asked him to tell her how much she owed him for all of the things that he had ever bought her so that she could pay him back. So she was in no debt to him whatsoever.
Okay.
He though told friends that he was the one that ended things because he had found out that she had been having multiple affairs with multiple people. Now, also, it's written in the trial transcripts later that when he testified, he did say that he knew that she did entertain other gentlemen at their flat. So whether he was happy about that or whether this was he knew she did it or whether he knew she did it and accepted it, it isn't actually clear. So their relationship is a bit of a strange one. There's also a child involved. There's a 2-year-old child. This is Jean's child. And I'm going to call her Blondie, actually, for this whole episode because it's going to be a lot easier because she has a lot of aliases. She's known by lots of different names. And he calls her Beatrice. So he knows her as Beatrice, but we're going to call her Blondie because that's how everybody else knew her.
All right.
Now, she had this child. It's not known 100% whether this child was Reg's child or not. And there's no mention of this child in any of the reports on this case whatsoever. It just so happens that when her dad was interviewed, he said that there was a child, but he couldn't be 100% whether or not it was Reg's child. And that's the only mention in all of the stuff I could find about this case. It's the only mention of the child. So I'm not sure where the child was at the time of this all happening. I don't know whether the child lived with Reg and Blondie, or no idea. So I don't know if the kid lived with the family or what had happened. But she was only 23 and she had a 2-year-old child. So she did have a really, really young child. Now, Reginald Strange was in the Royal Navy and he'd been in the Navy since he was 16. He was discharged honourably because he was medically unfit in 1939. Soon after he was discharged, he then went to work in the local dockyard until 1940. The beginning of 1940, he obviously were in the middle of like the war between
Right.
Germany and us over here, and the Blitz, and all of these things are happening. And he had a job, bless him, because he was 2 weeks out of work. He was starting to panic. So he took on a job to sell brushes out of a suitcase, door to door, where they do the salesman stuff.
Like brooms or like hairbrushes?
I think, yeah, like either hairbrushes or I think hairbrushes. I think it's hairbrushes.
Okay. All right. Not the best job in the world.
But also, we're in the middle of a war.
Right.
So, like, people are losing their houses. They're not really going to be concerned of buying brushes and stuff, are they?
True.
So,
No.
I think it's a hard job, but then it's even made even worse because of the time of year that it was. Now, obviously, it's not ideal. Plymouth is being bombed at the time. People aren't that bothered about buying a brush from a salesman. They're more upset about their house that's just been, razed to the floor. But he managed to hold this job down for about 2 months. And then he took up a job as a payment collection officer. So he would go for this. There was a company called Taylor's Clothing Club, and he would go around and get the money from people that owed Taylor's, a bit like a debt collector kind of thing.
Oh no, that's another absolutely miserable job. No.
Really, really hard jobs. So that kind of, I think you can kind of gauge the sort of person he is. He obviously gets his hand stuck in whatever he's doing to earn his money. So he's obviously a hard worker.
Yeah.
Now, on Thursday, August 29th, 1940, at around 7 o'clock in the evening, Blondie and Reg had gone for a drink at the Victoria Hotel bar. This was one of their regular places that they used to go. A lot of people knew them there. They were familiar faces in the area. They were there for around 20 minutes when Reg said that he left Blondie and he left at 7:30 to go and play darts at the Shades Hotel on his own. So it's like, oh, okay, so you just left your partner, sodded off to another pub to play darts by yourself. Okay, so you can see what kind of relationship these two have got. He didn't say that they'd had an argument or anything. He just said that he decided he wanted to play darts and off he went.
I mean, but to be honest, going to play darts is not the worst thing he could have done at that moment.
Yeah, but he wasn't. He's just playing darts.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very far, like the hotels weren't very far away. The witnesses say that they saw Blondie on her own just near the Victoria Hotel at 9:45 and then again at 10:45.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what she's doing near the hotel, but it just said that they saw her standing near the hotel.
Okay.
Now, Reg left the Shades. He headed back to the Victoria Hotel to look for her. Now, there was an air raid warning sound, siren, sounding that
Yeah,
night.
yeah.
So it's very loud. He said that he couldn't find her, couldn't see her. And it was dark, obviously. We're talking like late at night. It was dark.
Mhm.
And the one thing that I found that was really strange is that he does say that he goes to get chips from a fish and chip shop.
Okay.
Like, this is at like 10:30 at night. So they were open really late back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
They're not open at 10:30 at night now.
No. And plus
So it's really late.
it was the Blitz, so there had been like a curfew, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I thought that was really strange. I thought it was a really strange thing. Now, see, he stood waiting in a doorway just close to the hotel, and he saw, he was in the doorway of a pawn shop, and he saw a lady called Catherine Riggs, who was a barmaid at the Shades. So Catherine was walking along with a friend of hers. He called out to her. Yeah.
Wait. Can you say that again? What kind of shop was that?
Yeah, pawn shop. Why, what do you call them?
A pawn shop?
That's what I said.
No, you
pawn
said
shop.
No. You sound like you said porn shop.
Not adult porn, as in like pawning your goods.
You said
Oh,
it's
God.
pawn shop. Pawn shop.
Pawn shop.
There you go.
That's where he went. He's in a pawn shop. A pawn shop.
Did not go to a porn shop. That did not happen.
No, not porn. Porn. It's totally different. Okay, so yeah, he went to one of those. He was standing in the doorway. It was closed anyway. So it was closed, and he was stood in the doorway. He saw Kathleen.
Now, if it was a porn shop, then it probably would still be open, right?
It would have been open. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this isn't one of those kind of places.
No.
So he was stood there waiting. He saw Kathleen go by. He knew Kathleen.
Mhm.
He shouted to her, but she didn't hear him, and she carried on walking with her friend.
Okay.
So he was just like, okay, not a problem. I'm just going to go and get chips for us instead, take them home, and then I'll wait for her to come back. Well, maybe she's at home. So we went to this nearby fish and chip shop in Queen Street, got the chips and it was like 2 pennies worth. So it's 2 pence worth of chips.
That's it?
Which now, they're probably about £3 a portion. But this is 2 pennies worth of chips that he went to get him. And
that's nothing.
No, nothing. I wish the prices had stayed like that. Now, the fish and chip shop was just around the corner from their flat. And as he got close to home, he saw a man coming up the steps because they lived in the basement flat. So you've got like the road level, and then the steps went down to the front of their door of their flat. So he sees this guy coming out, and he's wearing flannel. I thought this was fun. He's wearing flannels and a light suit. Not 100% sure what the flannels are. So I'm not sure if that's the shoes or I don't know. But it also stated...
Is it like flannel pajamas or like a flannel shirt?
So I'm thinking that maybe his shoes. Like flannel shoes, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, I don't know.
So that was strange. But the thing is that they mention it in the police reports is that he was not wearing a hat.
Okay.
So it was very strange that this man wasn't wearing a hat in the 40s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it was documented. Like, I saw this man, he was wearing a suit and flannels, and he was not wearing a hat. So it's obviously an important thing that he noticed that this guy didn't have a hat on, as opposed to probably now where we would say he was wearing a hat.
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than I saw a guy walking along the street and he wasn't wearing a hat. So I thought that was I love the way that it's very interesting the way that they see things. So this guy was hurrying towards the taxi office, which is just down the road. And a newspaper reported that a man called John Mignelli told police that he had served Reg in the fish and chip shop in King Street between 10:30 and 10:35 p.m. So we know that Reg was served there at the fish and chip shop and then made his way home, which is probably about a 5 to 7 minute walk.
Okay.
From the fish and chip shop to his home.
Yeah, not far at all.
So there was another witness, a lady called Gladys Presserton, and she said that she saw Blondie in the street near her flat, close to a man dressed in a sports coat and flannels.
Oh, okay.
Okay. She couldn't be sure that they were actually in conversation, but she also noted he wasn't wearing a hat.
Oh.
Now, when Reg got home, he walked in the door, called out Blondie's name, but he obviously called her Beatrice. There was no answer. So he walked into the bedroom and found her slumped on the wooden floor in their bedroom.
Mm.
There were a set of silk stockings, her silk stockings, with a garter still on the stockings, knotted and tied around her throat. So obviously from this, her eyes were bulging and bloodshot. She had blue lips and her tongue was protruding out between her lips. This
Okay.
is obviously a horrifying thing to see.
Yeah.
But her hair was very neat and the clips in her hair were still all in place. So it didn't look like there had been a major struggle between her and her assailant.
Okay.
He tried shaking her to try and wake her up. This is obviously from his this is what he's said. He tried to shake her. He tried to untie the stockings from around her neck, but couldn't get his fingers in between to undo the knots. So he went and got a penknife and cut the stockings multiple times. I think like a maximum of like 3 times he cut them to try and get them off of her neck. And he was panicking as to like how to revive her, and he didn't know what to do. So he tried to give her water to drink. When that didn't work, he tried splashing water on her face and on her forehead to try and sort of bring her around and wake her up. Obviously, it didn't help. So he ran to the local taxi office, which was just down the road from their flat, and asked them to call a doctor. When he had explained how he had found his wife, they decided that a doctor probably wasn't going to be sufficient. And they decided that it would be better to call an ambulance and the police, which they did. Now, he would run backwards and forwards until the police got there. He would be running backwards and forwards from the flat, splashing water on her, and back to the taxi office saying, like, how long are they going to be? Like, I need help. I need help. A guy called PC Lay, the policeman, arrived at the flat at 11:10. And Reg was standing outside in the flat and told the PC that, he would be looking for Blondie and she was downstairs in the flat. The policeman said that Reg was quite agitated and followed him down and sat in a chair in the house and then was continuously repeating the words, "I cut the stocking too, and I took the garter off." Now, the police surgeon, a guy called Dr. McKee, arrived at around 11:45. Now, Reg was removed from the premises at that time and taken to the police headquarters. He was interviewed about an hour later, and it got to about 1:25, and I think that was when they actually sat down and did their proper interview with him. The interview didn't last very long. It only lasted about 40 minutes. It wasn't a real kind of in-depth interview either. And the police are known to have bungled this case quite a lot. There are quite a few mistakes in this case, which would end up in court being a big, big issue. So a doctor called Dr. McKee carried out Blondie's post-mortem. Now, he says that the cause of death was strangulation and that the constriction marks around her neck were consistent with the silk stockings. Now, he said that the person who did this would have had to have used like considerable force to inflict these injuries on her. And we know from other cases that we've done, we know that a strangulation case, that it takes a lot to strangle somebody.
Right.
It's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of strength to strangle another human being.
Especially in this case where it sounds like they were extremely tight. So there was maybe some sort of like type of like anger involved with it. Because if he had to cut it off
really tight.
If he had to cut it off, it was really, really tight.
So when talking to Reg, he spoke to the police and said that he had known, as he called her, Beatrice Brown, for about 3 years. They had only had one serious disagreement in the whole time that they were together. And that was back in April 1940s when he told her to leave the flat. He said that she did leave him. They split up. She left him. But within a week, they were back together again. That's the only time in the whole time that they've known each other that they've fallen out enough to break up.
I don't understand this where, I mean, they're not in a good place, right? Yeah. And she's obviously seen other men. Why I don't understand why he even brought her back.
Yeah.
Like, was he aware of what she was doing for a job? Like, was she known to be a sex worker?
It's not known. So it's not known 100% what she did. I've read lots of different articles from like the Plymouth Herald and the Plymouth Gazette and lots of different articles where they kind of contradict each other. One said that she would entertain men on a pole. Others would say that she would take men to her flat. Others would say she was just a bad character and promiscuous. So I'm not actually sure 100% what actual job she did.
Okay. Seeing that she was hanging outside of a hotel late at night, To me, that makes me lean towards the thought that she was, in fact, in sex work.
Maybe. I mean, people's opinions of her aren't very high, to be honest. Even her own parents say or her own father, in some of the articles that I read, even her own father sort of said that she was a difficult character with a young child. The son, the parentage of that child is not really known. Back in the 40s, that wouldn't have been a very admirable thing to have a child, one out of wedlock and two with a father like not known. So you can see the kind of thing that she was into. I mean, and he admits in different, it's reported in different articles that he admits that he knows that she has entertained other men, but whether or not he's in agreement of that, it doesn't say. So whether he knew, I mean, obviously he knows that she's done it, but whether that's something that he was aware of and happy, not accepting of, let's say, it doesn't actually say, or whether that's something she just did behind his back and he's found out about it. It doesn't actually say. So he said that after she came back on the 17th of April, he sent her a birthday greeting telegram. And after that, he received a note through a barman from her asking about ration cards and other stuff. He put this note in his waistcoat pocket. He said that it was on when he left. He didn't wear his waistcoat because it was warm. So he left it and transferred the note that he had into his coat. He said he didn't know how it came to be on the mantelpiece because that's where they found it at their flat. But he said it might have dropped out of his pocket and then a policeman might have put it on the mantelpiece. And this is how they found this letter from her. Now, police believe that the letter she had written in was actually written in the days close to her death and not months before, like he was saying. They believed that that was his sole motive for murder, that he was angry with her because she had written to him and said, I don't want to be with you anymore. This is the end. I'm not happy. Let me know how much I owe you for everything and I will pay you back. Give me my ration cards back and we'll just go our separate ways.
Okay. They've broken up before, so now why would this be any different? I mean, why would they think this breakup is going to be the catalyst for some murder?
Well, they're saying that he was angry with her decision to dump him, basically, and that's his motive for murdering her. Because obviously he's the nearest and dearest to her. There's is he angry that she split up with him and is he wreaked his revenge? Is he jealous that she's entertaining other men? Has he found out something and he's angry with her? And that's what the police basically said. So the police were criticised quite a lot at the trial for what they had done during this investigation. Reg was arrested, but he wasn't given his rights properly. So he was under arrest, but he wasn't arrested until later. So they took him in for questioning, but they didn't actually arrest him there and then. So what he was saying was a voluntary nature and therefore inadmissible in court.
Right.
Had he have been arrested, they could have used everything that he said, which is what they did. They used everything that he said as their case. So at the trial, police were basically outed for not cautioning Reg. Because they didn't caution him, that meant that they couldn't take what he said in that interview and use it in court. The jury also heard the man that was seen coming up the steps of the flat hadn't been identified. So that then gave them reasonable doubt as to whether Reg was the murderer or not. Now, a man called Frederick George Ball was thought to be the man coming up the steps. This is crazy. Listen to this, right? He admitted he was in the area. He admitted he was wearing the clothes that were described by Reg and the witness. So he was wearing the flannels and sports jacket. He said he wasn't wearing a hat that night. He said he was walking past the flat and heard voices coming from down the stairs in the flat. So he looked down the stairs to see where the voices were coming from. And then Reg had obviously seen him walking back up the stairs. He said he then went to the cinema and that he hadn't spoken to Blondie on the street at all, like the woman had said.
Okay. But he admitted to be in the area.
Yeah.
Admitted to walking past.
Yeah.
Admitted to being wearing these items that.
Yeah.
What they described, right? So he's the man. So what Reggie said he saw with the man walking up the steps, he really did see, right?
Exactly. Now, prosecutors said that there was a man at the taxi office when Reg went down to the taxi office to tell people what was going on and that he needed the doctor. There was a man stood at the office, and Reg remembers seeing this man. Now, the prosecutor said the man at the taxi office was doing war work and had gone to
Okay.
the cinema and was coming home from the cinema by getting a taxi to go home. Now, his wife and children, their house had been destroyed and they had been shipped off to Cornwall. And he was left in Plymouth to carry on with the work. You know, quite often in wartime, the wife and kids would be shipped off somewhere and the husbands would stay back.
Right.
The prosecutors said that it was very strange that Reg didn't demand the man's name as he came to the top of the stairs, and that Reg was at fault because he didn't find out the man's name when he got to the house.
What? So because he didn't ask for his name, he's at fault?
Well, apparently.
That makes absolutely no sense. Like, I don't understand. This is absolutely insane.
It really is. It really is. Now, prosecutors believed that Reg strangled Blondie, then tied the stockings around her neck to make it look like somebody had come in and strangled her. Then they said that he then cut them off again with a knife, pretending to try and revive her with the water from the water pitcher. He left it and then planned to run to the nearby taxi office to ask them to call for an ambulance and then race back to the flat to wait. Okay.
This makes absolutely no sense. This is horrible.
I know. So in court,
this is insane.
It is insane. Reg had told the court told the jury there that there was a man that showed ill will towards Blondie. She had told him at some point that there was a man that was jealous of her and resented her talking to other men. Now, it did mention in this bit that this guy used to watch her up a pole. Now, I'm wondering if this is pole dancing. I don't even know if they had that in the 40s, but there was this mention of up a pole. I'm not sure whether that is just old speak for something else. So I'm not 100% on that one.
I mean, it's not like she was a firefighter or anything.
Maybe. Now, he said that he had already told police about this man. And he told police that he didn't think she was afraid of this man, but she thought he was a bit of a nuisance.
Okay.
He used to follow her around a bit and make a nuisance of himself.
Right.
Now, Reg's defense barrister was a guy called Scott Henderson, and he zoned, basically, as a barrister would, he zoned in on the inconsistencies that the police had put forward and all of the failings in the investigation. And he said that as Reg was never cautioned, it meant that the statement was entirely voluntary, and thus meant that was inadmissible in court.
Exactly.
The judge can't argue with that. That's the truth. He said that his client was keen to give evidence in his defense, but a legal opinion was there was no case to answer because there's no evidence whatsoever that Reg had anything to do with this.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no sign of forced entry on the flat at all. However, Reg had said that he didn't think that Blondie would have let somebody put stockings around her neck, which then made me think, I wonder if she was a sex worker because of the way he's talking. She would never let somebody do that. She would never let somebody put that around her neck.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if perhaps he knew the kind of work she was doing and that's how she made their money. Now, Mr. Henderson also said there was no time for Reg to get from the fish and chip shop to now we know he was at the fish and chip shop and we know what time because there's a guy that remembers serving him. So we know that he was there. Mr. Henderson said that there was no chance for him to get from the fish and chip shop back to the flat to murder her, to then cut her free, to then run to the taxi rank, to then run back again to see this guy. The timeline just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And he's saying that if that's the case and Reg had no time to commit that murder, then there's no case for him to answer and that he shouldn't even be on trial in the first place.
No, exactly. Exactly right.
So he also asked the jury how likely it was that Reg would have bought 2 packets of chips from the fish and chip shop if he was going to go home and murder his wife.
Yeah.
I love that was amongst all that other evidence, they bring up the fact that he bought 2 packets of chips.
So really, we only have heard evidence that Reggie couldn't have done this.
Yeah.
For the prosecution, all they have is speculation. And that's it.
How is Reggie the murderer?
And if there's no way that he's going to be able to get from, if he can't get from point A to point B in the time frame, then why are we even here?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's no twin brother there that's getting the chips from the chip shop. It's definitely Reg. And the chips were found back at the house on the side. The chips were actually there on the side. So we know it was definitely him. Now, Mr. Justice McNaughton told the jury that they needed to be reminded of Blondie's cause of death. I think this judge sounds like he was exasperated by this point. He says the cause of death was asphyxiation, but was it caused by the ligature around her neck? If they had no reasonable doubt that this was the cause of death, then the next question was, did Reginald kill Blondie? He said to the jury, and this is a quote, "It's a case of circumstantial evidence, so I give you this direction, which you will find a safe guide in dealing with this and all other cases of circumstantial evidence. You must not convict the prisoner merely because the evidence is consistent with his guilt. You can only convict him if, in your opinion, the evidence is inconsistent with any other rational conclusion." He also said that the prosecution's claims about this letter that she wrote him was very far-fetched, and he didn't really think that was a motive enough for murder. He made a point of referring to Reg's statement, which he did actually rule that inadmissible in court. So he did actually say that we can forget Reg's statement completely. And he said, and this is another quote, "I'm bound to say I always consider that a police officer is in very great difficulty, or maybe in abiding by what are erroneously called the judge's rules, in taking statements from what I might call prospective accused persons. And that is sometimes very difficult. I think I should have difficulty myself in deciding the moment at which it becomes necessary for the police officer to warn a person who is making a statement when he need not say anything more than he wishes." So he's just kind of covering the police's back there, saying that it's very difficult to know when the point to come in and say, right, you're now under caution.
Yeah,
So really, they should have done it right at the very beginning, as soon as they got him in the room, because then everything he says can be used in court.
exactly.
And it's quite clearly a murder. It's quite clearly she didn't do this to herself. So really, they should have already, it's not like it's a chaotic scene where they think it could have been an accident. It's quite clearly a murder. So they literally just messed up. They're all humans, and that's what happens. So he says that he goes on, there's this huge long statement that he gives, basically telling the jury that it's very hard for police doing their job, and it's very hard for them to know when is the right time to say the right thing, and that should they have taken down his statement and got him to sign it, probably they should have done, but unfortunately in this case they didn't. Okay, now the jury then went out to deliberate, and surprisingly or not, 1.5 hours later, they came back with their decision. And their decision was that Reginald Strange was found not guilty of the murder
Oh,
of
God.
Beatrice Loveday Brown.
Oh my God. I was expecting you to say something else. I swear.
Was you expecting me to say you got guilty?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I must admit, I did think at the time, please don't tell me that they're going to go guilty, because that would be a massive miscarriage of justice. Now, it's written in the reports in the papers that I've read, and you love the way that old newspapers report stuff. They don't care, do they? There's no care in the words that they give, and they don't hide anything in the old newspapers. And it was reported that he emerged from court smiling, and no one was ever convicted of her murder, and the case is completely still unsolved.
Wait a second. So they didn't go after the other guy who said he was there
Yeah.
and that he walked down to the flat to see what was going on?
No.
Why?
There's no evidence linking him to this at all. Nothing.
Okay, so this Frederick Ball guy admits to being at the scene of a crime, potentially at the time of the crime, wearing the suit jacket, flannels, and no hat like the witnesses said, but yet the police have no interest in investigating this guy?
Yeah. Nothing ever happened to him. Yeah. Nothing ever happened to Frederick George Ball. And the other thing is that they're sort of alluding that this Mr. Ball is the same man that was at the fish and chip shop that Reg saw outside the fish and chip shop. And if that's the case, why didn't Reg say it was the same man? If he saw that man coming up out of the steps, but was he in such a panic that he just didn't realize it was the same man?
Well, you got to also remember it's the Blitz, so there's probably like a blackout going on at the time, right?
That's right.
I mean, it's pitch dark, so yeah, you might not be able to see like great features on the man. And then with him finding his girlfriend dead, I mean, he has other things on his mind. So
Yeah. That's it. I mean, he's in there. He's wearing the same clothes that the woman describes. He says that he says that he didn't speak to Blondie at all. So he says that he didn't. He might have been on the same road as her, but he didn't recognize her and he didn't speak to her. So I mean, if anything, I think he's probably the most likely suspect for this, other than Reg.
he said that his family were elsewhere, so he was a single man.
Yeah,
Well, really, he was
yeah,
all alone, no
yeah,
family around, maybe lonely, and he decided that he wanted to have some company.
exactly. And has it gone wrong? That would be who I would have gone for straight away. He's placed at the scene by two witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
He's wearing the clothes that both the witnesses describe. He
Mm-hmm.
said that he was going to the cinema. He ends up at the. I mean, that's the thing. He says that he was going to the cinema, and that I don't know whether he went to the cinema before he saw the flat or after he saw the flat, because that doesn't make sense. So he must have gone. If that's the case, he must have gone to cinema after, because Reginald went in and found her on the floor and then rang to the taxi rank, and this guy's at the taxi rank. So he can't have gone to the cinema after seeing Reg get to the house. So he must have been to the cinema that night, or as he says, I went to the cinema. Or was the cinema, I went to Blondie's house. Was that the case? So my guess on this one is that she took someone back to her flat. Something's happened. This guy has lost his shit and has killed her. And then he's escaped as Reg is coming home.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think you're absolutely right.
I would have looked into Mr. Ball a lot more than the police did.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, he admitted he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Reggie saw him there, so obviously he was there.
Yeah. And he's seen by other people. It's not just Reg that puts him there. Like you could be forgiven for thinking Reg is trying to cover his own arse.
Exactly.
But the lady sees him and she describes him wearing the same kind of clothes and the not wearing a hat, which is important at that time. So it's I would have said the police have gone in completely the wrong direction on this one.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they are way off the mark with this. And they just had these blinders on and that's all they were focusing on. I mean, was there any other investigation after the trial?
I think that was the end of it. I think his Reg's trial was the end of it. That was it, and it was over, and it's been over since. And it's interesting because this is basically all done with archive. I did this all with like archive newspaper footage. So you can go back and look through what was actually reported, what they reported on at the time. And different articles that have different in opinions, in that they say a couple of things, that this man was the man that was at the fish and chip shop, then others say, was it the man at the fish and chip shop, or was this a completely different man? But it seems very strange. It seems very strange that the police didn't sort of zone in on that guy.
No, exactly. I can't explain it. It makes no sense.
So yeah, so that was our case for today.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was really good. I like that one.
I think this is one that won't be solved. I think
Yeah.
this is one that's not gonna, unfortunately, I think it's too, they've missed too many opportunities in this one. I don't think, unless somebody comes forward and actually confesses. I had a look and there's no kind of serial killer. There's nothing of like similar deaths or anything, similar strangulation deaths anywhere reported in the Plymouth area. So it looks like it was like somebody who was known to her because she let them in her flat. Somebody who was maybe frustrated because she talked to other men. Maybe he got too attached to her. Perhaps he did. And perhaps he wanted to put a stop to that.
I just can't believe that they took the easy route and they looked at Reggie and they had their blinders on and that was their sole focus and they missed everything else.
Yeah, yeah. They ran with it.
There was like no evidence to take it to trial. It's absolutely insane.
Why would you do that? They just made their mind up that it was Reg. And that was the end of it.
It makes no sense.
No sense. That's right. It's crazy. Crazy.
Well, thank you for that. That was very good.
Yeah. You're welcome. So at the end of our cases, this one wasn't too heavy. This is it's just a bit of a crazy case. We like to cheer you up a little bit with the segment we like to call Dumb Criminal.
Hey, you's a dummy, and you's a piece of shit.
Jerry, there are a few types of establishments that seem to be prone to robberies.
Post offices,
Yep.
yeah.
Banks, gas station, petrol stations, and in this case, a fast food restaurant. So back in May, 2 people were arrested after police say that they assaulted and tried to rob the employees at a Toledo, Ohio Wendy's restaurant.
Okay.
So court documents show that Dominique Ezel and Jelenia Stewart are facing robbery charges after they allegedly tried to take an employee's phone during the altercation.
Right.
Now, once this altercation began, employees called 911 to report a disorder at the location. They told officers that a disgruntled drive-through customer was upset because she did not receive cheese on her crispy chicken sandwich.
How dare you? How dare you forget the cheese on that sandwich?
And I bet you it was a really crappy yellow American fake plastic slice. So if you are going to get cheese on a crispy chicken sandwich, at least make it a good cheese, please.
Yeah.
She entered the restaurant very angry and confronted the employees. Now, without provocation, she would grab 2 Frosties from the counter and would throw them at the employees, which, first off, is a complete and utter no-no. You do not throw good Frosties. Frosties are a national treasure and they should be respected. So don't throw Frosties, okay?
But also, you don't act like an actual child and throw food either.
They then knocked and threw several items from the register area, including a cookie display, which hit and injured a pregnant female employee.
Oh dear. All over them for getting cheese on her burger. That's like for them forgetting it.
Now, police say that Stewart was carrying a minor child at the time, okay? Now, shortly after, Ezel came in and began throwing items as well, damaging a sales register.
Oh my God.
Employees were able to remove the 2 suspects and were able to take photos of them and the vehicle that they left in when Stewart allegedly grabbed an employee's hair and pulled her to the ground in order to take the phone. The phone was retrieved by another employee before the 2 suspects drove off, but not before Ezel returned the chicken sandwich without cheese by throwing it into the restaurant.
Please tell me she was arrested.
Yes, they were both arrested.
Oh, well, I'm glad. What an idiot.
Toledo police would state that the incident did result in minor injuries. So the moral of the story is...
Don't be an asshole.
Yes, don't be an asshole. Besides that, the moral of the story is there's no need to throw a fit over cheese, and there's absolutely no reason for you to be throwing Frosties.
People make mistakes. Don't go throwing stuff around, you loser. Wow. And with that, we will leave you there. Thank you so much for joining us. We won't be here next week because next week we will be in London at CrimeCon. So we'll do some live bits for you, and we'll release those afterwards. There will be an episode that we're going to be doing. If you've listened to our show for a long time, then you will have heard the original episode we did on the death of Stuart Lubbock. We've got some updates for you on that one. That's going to be our live episode that we're going to be doing at CrimeCon. So we'll have that available for you afterwards. So have a lovely week, and we will see you on our socials. Catch up with you then. And for now, be nice.
And bye.